I'm also going to turn on our live transcription, but if you don't want to see it, you can also turn that off on your end if you'd like. Just a couple of other reminders. I'm joined by two other folks here today, so you can keep it on gallery view, you can keep it on speaker view. Speaker view is kind of weird when there's three people talking because everything just bounces around. So sometimes I like gallery view, but whatever is comfortable for you. So my name is Dr. Alicia Schatteman. I'm the director here of the Center for Nonprofit and NGO Studies at NIU. And I'm going to let our other panelists kind of introduce themselves. So Julianne.
Hi, good morning. Well, good afternoon. I'm Julianne O'Connell. I am the assistant director in the Center for Nonprofit and NGO Studies. And I'm the instructor for our NNGO 490 nonprofit internships class, and also for an internship class we do through the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences.
Thank you. Denise.
Hi, I'm Denise Burchard, and I am the assistant to the chair at the Department of Public Administration. We are a graduate program, and all of our students participate in a 21-month internship. It's a paid internship, and so any student who doesn't have 2 or more years of public service experience. So,
perfect. Well, and Denise, you kind of got into it a little bit, and so maybe Julianne, will go back to you and kind of walk us through what the nonprofit internship looks like for undergraduates. Voluntary, Denise mentioned the MPA program, it's required. But when do typically students do that? Those kinds of things around kind of the differences with an undergraduate internship.
Sure. Well, in our program, our advisor, our academic advisor, really starts advising our students when they first come into the program. So although it's not required, an internship isn't required in our program, well over 70%, and I think we're inching up very much higher than that, of our students do complete at least one internship. And we have a good chunk of students who complete even 2 or more internships while they're with us as undergrads. So that typically for us will happen their junior year or senior year. There are a couple classes that we like to see them take and just know that they've done well in, but they are directed in this through the whole advising process. So it's something that they really consider kind of part of their curriculum. And like I said, their academic advisor is prepping them and like, this would be a good class for this. And so by the time it gets to junior year, they're like, okay, here's where it fits in best. And we go from there.
And Denise, on the graduate side, you mentioned that the MPA program has a required internship, but maybe if you can talk about that kind of, when does students actually begin that process of seeking an internship, and you manage that process? So if you can walk us through that a little bit.
Yes, so so like I said, if a student applies to our program and gets accepted and they don't have any public sector experience, we have a process where we, well, usually they apply in the spring before the fall semester. And we have a whole process where students will go through sending us their resumes, cover letters, and then the internships that we have, we post, we use the Huskies Get Hired website through Career Services. And so students will see all the jobs that are posted, and the students will apply, and then the internship sites will choose which students they want to interview. And we usually have a one-day kind of speed interview process where students meet with about up to 7 employers and interview for different positions. And then after the end of the day, we have the students rank their choices, the employers rank their choices, and then I do a matching at the end of the day, and then contact the employer the next day and say, this is the student I'd like to place with your organization. And if they agree, they reach out to the student and make the offer. So I don't force anybody and I don't make the match, but it's more, it is a competitive process. And then the students start their internships, and they are in the internship for the full time, the full 21 months they're in the MPA program. So it's a really it's a good 2-year professional experience preparing them for a career in whatever avenue they're going into. So, and, you know, obviously when you're in an internship for a longer period of time, you really get to understand an organization and become part of the organization. So that's kind of the purpose behind our whole program.
So if you were interested on the graduate side, you would need to know, if you want a graduate intern, ideally like February or so before the fall semester when the students start, like just so people have an idea of what that timeline looks like?
Yes, even sooner. If you have any interest in an intern, it's good to get in contact with me early so we can talk about a job description and what they would do, and then it is a paid internship too. So that's another thing you would have to be able to pay them. 20 to 24 hours a week is our requirement. And so we can work with you. We have some different opportunities there with the pay part. We might be able to assist a little bit in sharing some of that. But so it's a long-term process and it's a long-term commitment. And so that we could also maybe even work something out for a 1-year commitment too. So we could, make that work for some people. But yeah, we do need to know in advance, and so we can get started and figure out how to place the right person in your organization. We also do accept students in January too. So there may be times other than just that fall semester where we're placing students. So I try to work with different organizations because I get requests throughout the year. So, but the best time would be to try to do it at the early January to let me know for the fall.
So Julianne, how does that kind of compare on the undergraduate side when it comes to commitment, but then also when nonprofits have to let you know that they're interested, that they really want an intern?
Yeah, so our program is a little different than that because we're just doing internships for 1 semester, although not often. We do sometimes have students then that stay for a 2nd semester. If both the student and the organization, if there's a project that's ongoing and they want to do that, we can absolutely do that. In NNGO, I think there's 2 ways that I'll get into that we have interns. So one is with the Dekalb County Nonprofit Partnership. So we work in collaboration with the Dekalb County Nonprofit Partnership and their member organizations. And that is funded, those are funded positions. There's a stipend. So if you're a member of the DCMP, then you can apply through that channel. And then we also, I place students all over the area in Dekalb and then in the region. So it depends, sometimes a student will want to specifically stay in Dekalb because that's where they're living, or there's certain organizations that they think they would like to be working with, and others would really like to be elsewhere in the city or someplace in between Dekalb and the city. So we try to make something work for all the students. And timing wise, I would agree with Denise. DCMP, they have their own timing when they put out when internships will be available. But for all of us, it's great to know the semester beforehand. So if you think you're going to want a student in the fall, we'll want to know in the spring. So that January, February is great because, as Denise mentioned, we can help work with you on job descriptions and what does this really look like for us for an undergrad? Because while Denise's students might already have work experience, significant work experience, or they've gotten through their undergrad, ours have not. And so, designing a job description that we know will be helpful for you, that I can be pretty assured that our students would have the skills to be able to do what you need. Sometimes that takes a little bit of time. So if you thought you needed somebody in the spring, then we would want to know, in the fall, then probably September, no later than October. That's now to say that though, that doesn't mean that we haven't done something last minute. And every once in a while we'll have a student who really wants to work specifically for an organization that we'll reach out to and be like, hey, I have a student who really wants to work with you. And we'll try to work that out that way.
So for both of you, and maybe Julianne, you can start. What about an organization that has never had an intern before, or they're thinking about an internship, so they're not even thinking about timing at this point? and usually, at least in my experience, it's usually staff sometimes that are like, we need extra help. We really want to take on different projects, those kinds of things. But the board might be resistant, or some other staff might be resistant, maybe because there's a cost. But what are some things when you talk to nonprofit organizations, if they're thinking about an intern, having an internship, what things should they be thinking about, or reasons that might help kind of make that case for an undergrad? And then I'll ask Denise on the graduate side.
Sure. Well, a couple of things. I think I would just want to remind people that an intern isn't a replacement for an employee. You know, an internship on the undergrad side, if the student is taking a course with us, they will be spending 120 hours in a semester at your organization. So that ends up anywhere between 10 and 15 hours a week, just kind of depending on what you need and their class schedule too. So it's not a replacement for a job. And there's a whole other discussion we could get into someday about IRS requirements and all that sort of thing. But I would say that's the first thing. The second thing is to remember that, especially with an undergraduate, many of our students have never had a full-time office job, professional job. So what happens, I think, often, and this is a beautiful thing, our nonprofits are really excited about this, is that the nonprofit organization ends up in part being a mentor. This organization is likely the first time a student has ever, even if they did have experience before, has ever worked in a nonprofit organization. So that nonprofit really gets the first crack at helping a student understand both the challenges and the opportunities of working in a nonprofit setting. And, you know, often our kids come out of these nonprofits and are just like, oh my gosh, the staff is so dedicated. They're so good at what they do. I never knew about this job. So it's mentoring. And then on the other side, I think what we see the nonprofit, what they get from that is really a fresh perspective. Our students have pretty solid academic background that they can ask some great questions, they can give some great feedback, but also they might not exactly know the culture of that organization. And sometimes we've had where an organization has been doing things for a long time and a student is like, well, what if you did it this way? And the organization is like, oh, God, like never thought of that. So it's really nice to get that fresh input from students. So I think on the undergraduate side, I would say that we have really talented students, and a nonprofit is going to be helping to train that student to be this next generation of nonprofit staff people. And so not going to be perfect, but you're going to get a fresh perspective and an ability for the students have a great ability to connect the research that they're learning in classes to what's actually happening in real life.
So Denise, on the graduate side, because it's a longer commitment, more hours and more time, and potentially more fully funded, why would someone want to consider bringing on a graduate student into their nonprofit?
Well, for a lot of the reasons that as an undergrad, you know, they are going to need to mentorship and that kind of thing, but they are graduate level. So they are, you know, we really want them to become part of your management team. And I would say, you know, the first few months are going to be a lot more training, but hopefully, and I would say for most of our students, you know, once they are integrated into your organization and your management team, they can take on some major projects and really, you know, take your organization to a higher level and maybe do some of those projects that the manager, the executive director can never get to, you know, those big projects, and they can go deeper in that. And also the other nice thing about our program, and I think we get this feedback from our students and the employers, is, you know, while they're in your internship, they're also going to classes. And so they bring the problem from the internship into the class and they say, hey, you know, this is going on at our organization. Can I get some feedback, you know, from the professor and the other students? And it's really neat how students say, yeah, you know, I brought it to my class and this is what we talked about and here's some new ideas. And also, you know, sometimes they'll leave class and they go into their organization the next day and they're like, oh yeah, we just talked about this in class. So, you know, you're getting that new perspective and you're also getting a graduate level student. A lot of our students do some really, a lot of them take on a lot of the social media aspect of an organization, which, maybe some of us older individuals were not as, up on some of that. And so they can take that to the next level. They do a lot of good analysis of data. They do a lot of surveys. And of course, too, when they do a survey, they have 21 months. So there's time for them to go ahead and put together a survey, send it out, and then analyze it for you. So, there's so many benefits to having a long-term graduate level intern.
So Julianne, how much do you work with the internship supervisors? And then I'll ask Denise about that. When you get an intern and then that's it, like now you're off and running for 4 months, or how much do we kind of invest time to make sure the internship is going well?
Yeah, I would say that depends. We've had internship host sites who've been doing this for a really long time. And now that they've had multiple, we've got organizations who've had interns of ours. They're on their 15th, 16th, 17th intern over the years. And so they have kind of figured out with these undergrads, they have begun to, I think, really trust that these students are starting to learn more about themselves in this process. And so we've got some organizations where like, here are 4 different projects that we would really like to work on while you're here. Which one or 2 feels like it really speaks to your strengths? Which is great, because that we've had some just amazing, I'm thinking of a couple just recent ones where the Dekalb County History Center, the student that they got connected with, her passion, her love is graphic design, and graphic design at a really high level. And she ended up taking on this, really working closely with a grant that they had received, working with their staff. And that was because they were like, okay, we've got these couple projects, what fits best with you? And so that works really well. When other organizations come in, brand new, then no, I definitely try to work with them at the beginning to ask them, what are a couple things that you could maybe have? And if it's just this one thing, then we can do that. If that's, if there's one project, that's fine. Let me help you just kind of fill in the blanks, what I think our students can do and what might be really attractive to them. So depending on the need, we either work really closely with an organization or the organization has been like, yeah, nope, we know how to do this now. But then we check in on a regular basis. We have midterm evaluations with our host sites, and then we do surveying and after the end of each internship. So we're getting feedback on a really regular basis. But we also get feedback from our students because, as Denise mentioned, undergrad-wise, we have an undergraduate course. And for us, it's not just a placeholder for the internship. Our students actually come to an internship class where we do some of the similar things that they do in MPA. We talk about what are some of the issues that the intern is experiencing, and we kind of crowdsource it. We almost use those as case studies. How could we do it better? And that gives me an opportunity then to also get back to the intern host site. Like, oh, okay, I understand that you guys are working on this. Do you mind if we use this in class? And can you give us some more details so that we can learn from it? So it's kind of nice because for both the organization and the student, I think there's a lot of synchronicity there.
So Denise, on the graduate side, how much support do the internship host sites get, and what does that look like?
Well, we, believe it or not, we've had interns in positions for over 50 years in our program. So a lot of our internship sites have been doing this for a very long time. So I don't really need to instruct them much, but I do get from there's a lot of rotations of internship sites. So, somebody will have an intern and then they'll hire them full time for a while. And so they won't need an intern. So it is dependent upon the internship site, how much support I need to give them. We do require, every semester I meet with every student who's in an internship. They do an evaluation of what's going on at their internship site. and we discuss that. And a lot of times if there are issues at the internship, the student is expected to work on them themselves. I may guide them and support them. And if a supervisor calls me with an issue, I try to let them handle it for the most part. But I do, I definitely step in if there's a need. I do visit each internship site. Usually at the 1-year point, I try to go there and sit down with the intern supervisor and the intern, talk about how things are going, make sure the student is getting a good experience. And so that goes well. And then the supervisor does do 3 different reports. One right when the student starts, about 3 months after they start the program, and then at the 1-year mark, and then at the end of the program. So we do have interaction that way too.
So let's talk finances for a second. I've been a director here at the center for about 2 years. And one of the things that we've been trying to work on is trying to have funds either through philanthropy or otherwise where our undergraduate students are getting paid for these internship experiences. And part of it is I want them to get paid because there's a value to the work. But I also want to be able to open up the internships for everyone versus the people that can afford to do an internship. And I didn't do an internship as an undergrad. I did not do a study abroad for all of the same financial reasons that many of our students aren't able to do those things. So that's certainly been an interest of mine since getting here. But I do want to talk about kind of the spectrum of when it comes to offering some kind of remuneration for our interns. So maybe Julianne, on the undergraduate side, if you can kind of talk through what kind of versions we currently have and what are the options.
Right. So I'll speak to the DeKalb County Nonprofit Partnership Internship first. DCMP members who are part of that. That program is financially sponsored by the Roberts Family Foundation, a family foundation that provides $575 stipends each semester, which, for some of our students, that means that they don't have to do a second job. And we've got students who have third jobs. So it might take that a little bit of pressure off them that way. But also then on their resume, they're able to put that they had a paid internship. And research, and we can talk about this a little later, is starting to show that has some impact down the line. So through DCMP, our students get a $575 stipend. If they're not going through that program and we're placing them on our own or helping them with an organization, there's a couple different ways. One is an organization's like, yeah, sorry, we just can't afford that. And so as you mentioned, Alicia, you've been working hard to make sure we have some philanthropic dollars that we might be able to help with that, at least for a stipend, but hopefully we are really working hard to get towards a fully paid internship. So 120 hours at, between 11 and 15, just, there's some wiggle room there. So we're working with organizations like that. I have other organizations that are like, no, we also think it's an equity issue, and we haven't started doing internships because we wanted to make sure that we had funding. And so we needed to get funding together on our end so that we could make sure to offer that. And I've had some organizations that have started with a stipend, but also have then worked towards it. And I think as we're learning a little bit more about how unpaid internships impact our students and how it can even impact our students being able to have an internship, I see organizations moving more towards it. So this is a process for us right now. So just everybody should know that our goal is that all of our students would be able to have a paid internship at some level.
And I think for both programs, the students, we like the students to be enrolled in a course.
Yes.
And for the most part, that's true.
Mhm.
And so the students are also paying for the course,
Right.
in addition to being in maybe an unpaid internship. So it's a big lift for some students to be able to do that. So what about on the MPA side, Denise, when it comes to payment, is there a range there? If a nonprofit is interested, what does that look like?
Yeah, so right now, yes, all of our interns are paid, and we expect them to be paid because we think there is the value. I mean, if you do an unpaid, then we don't know that they get the right supervision and stuff like that. So the idea is, that there's a value to having a graduate student work for you. So we really we expect payment. Right now, the range is about from $12 an hour to $20 an hour. Our students get paid. And they do, like I said, 20 to 24 hours a week. And we have a couple different arrangements. We have some students are, we consider them graduate assistants of Northern Illinois University. They get paid by NIU, and then we contract them out to the organization. And this also provides that student with a tuition waiver. And so that also takes the burden of, payroll and all that off of a lot of organizations, which is nice for many organizations. You just write a monthly check to NIU for the intern services. So we have that option. We also do have some options. There's a Roten Smith scholarship available for some. So in some circumstances, the internship site pays half of the student's salary, and then this Roten Smith, and that's for minority students, they pay the other half. So there are a few different options that you can, to try to reduce the cost. And we are actually trying to work on this upcoming year with our board of advisors, trying to find more ways to support these internships of places where maybe it's difficult for them to pay a full intern, a full graduate intern. So we're going to be meeting with our board of advisors in August and trying to find ways to maybe supplement some of these internship stipends for students. So
That's great.
Yeah.
So we're at about halfway through. We thought we would take some questions. We wanted to go through, kind of give you a sense of both undergraduate and graduate programs, but then answer any more specific questions that you might have. Either you're thinking about it, or you've had one in a different university possibly, and you're like, does it work that the same at NIU, or whatever your questions might be. So if you just want to raise your hand, and then I'll unmute, or you can type it into the chat if you're not available to ask your question verbally. So who wants to kick it off? Delilah, yeah.
So I don't know if this is way off left field, but the conversation about paid, as you know, we're trying to venture into internships for this fall semester. And it begged the question, is an intern a 1099 employee or a W-2 employee, or what kind of employee is an intern?
And there's, there's a gray here in the Department of Labor when it comes to this. So if you require, so this is how I understand it, if you require your intern to be in a certain location during a certain time, and there's some supervisory roles, then they become an employee and they're on your payroll. If it's more like we've seen in the last little while, where they're doing kind of contract work outside of your organization, they don't need to be there Tuesday at 4 o'clock, they have flexibility to work remotely, then that would be more of a 1099 kind of contractual. So it is, I would say, get your legal advice on your end, how that could work, especially if you're new to this. That's how I interpret it, but there's lots of gray here.
But like, is one more attractive to an intern than the other? Or
no, I don't think so. Well, you guys can answer that if you think one matters more than the other, Denise or Julianne. Purposes. Yeah, for tax purposes, right?
Well, I think for most of our students, it's not going to that's not going to matter as much. The ones that are contracted get a tuition waiver. That's the benefit for them. Mm-hmm. So so that helps them a lot. But as far as, I don't think it matters to them as long as they're getting paid. I don't think they make enough to really impact their taxes.
Yeah, whatever they would pay in taxes, they would likely get back anyway at the end of the year, is my guess. So yeah, probably not as attractive.
Yeah, this is Untitled Chapter from Arab American Family Services, and we have a robust internship program, but at the end of the day, we haven't even gone into, I've been thinking about it because it is about equity, and it is, the students are, and I was a social worker, so I did do my internship, and didn't get paid for it, but I had to pay for the class, as you've stated. The problem is it becomes very, like, can they collect unemployment later on, depending on where they're being, assigned, and all of this lovely stuff, which is something that there's not enough information.
Yeah.
And then can an internship be claimed as, taking a staff's role, right? Because that's not the intention of an internship, to come in and take a staff role. The intention of that internship is to give that student the skills in order to get, that skills they needed for that semester or for that year that they're with us. So it's becoming a little bit more confusing, and I wish we could bring these experts who are tax experts, employment law experts, so that they can talk to us about it, because before we make those decisions to go that route, how could we? I'd love to see the schools first say, when you're doing your internship, we're not going to charge you for that, and see how well that goes with their business end, right? Because it's all about business at the end of the day, whether we're in a not-for-profit or whatever. And I think that's what worries me, is that we're asking others to do things, but we also, as universities and colleges, are not putting ourselves out there to do as well, right? And so how do we make it equitable? Maybe then we don't charge them for the class, but then they get to do that work where they don't have to pay $1,500 or whatever it is for that class that they have to pay. Sorry,
That's okay.
Yeah. That's where I'm at. I would love to get the experts with the unemployment and get the experts with the other ones with the taxes.
So Denise, when they're treated as a regular employee, you're most familiar with that internship program, because that's what it's been for all of these 50 plus years.
Right.
Yeah.
We have had, and I mean, the laws may be changing and I haven't had any experience yet. We have had some students who tried to collect unemployment, and we have been able, because they are taking it as a class and it's a requirement of the program, we have been able to not pay unemployment over the years. Now, like I say, if things are changing, this may be something we're going to have to relook at. But that's always been our argument, and we've been able to stand behind the employer and say, look, this is a class assignment and cannot collect unemployment. So,
Yeah. Good to know.
but, yeah, I don't know if that'll work forever, but so.
And I think on our end, for our students in general, when you register full-time at Northern, you pay the same amount for between 12 credit hours and 18 credit hours. And so depending on how you want to look at it, you might not be paying extra for a class, but we have students who are having to make some decisions about, can I do a summer internship? Summer works better for me, but financial aid doesn't cover summer. And so how do I pay for a class over the summer? So there's definitely some sticky points, and I really appreciate that last comment, because I think that is something that, as the laws are changing, IRS is looking at things maybe a little differently. That would be really great for NIU, and Alicia, we can likely do that, gather some experts along with NIU's career services to, okay, what is the lay of the land at the moment for that?
Right.
Well, and Julianne, you bring up summer, and Denise, you can probably see how does that work in the summer for MPA students, but also undergraduate summer. Because of that issue you brought up around financial aid not being there available, that's where I think we have the opportunity to use philanthropic funds to help pay for those summer classes as a bridge. But Denise, how does the summer work when it's a non-academic semester? In many cases, students may not take classes during the summer. How do you guys deal with the internship during that period?
Well, in the summer, our students do take classes, and especially if they're a graduate assistant, they're required to take a class. So most of our students are taking 2 classes in the summer plus the internship. So that's not been an issue for us. So
awesome. And can they work more hours than they typically do during the fall or spring?
They can. We try to, if they're not in a class, during the times they're not in class, we say, yes, they can work extra hours.
And same with, I guess, breaks, right? Like if an employer wants to pay them or have more hours during the Christmas break or whatever, they can do that. Yeah.
Right. So they can work extra over the breaks, over the summer when they're not in classes.
So Mark asked about site supervisor requirements for the majority of the interns. So what are the site supervisors expected to do, Julianne, maybe undergrad and then Denise grad? Because you are taking on a new employee as an intern. What are their expectations around time that they need to spend with the interns? You both of you already talked about mentoring, but other things to consider for the commitment for those supervisors.
So for our undergrad class, we have our hopes and desires, and then we have like what's really expected. What's really expected is that like you're the boss and you're the person who, you know, signs off at the end that they did the work that they were supposed to, and in between you help when they have questions. And you know, that's one thing we've been working on for a little while, is to make that kind of training for site supervisors more robust. What are we going to, you know, how can we help the organizations that haven't been doing internships with us for a while? So we're gathering information from our orgs that have done this for a long time to see like what really works for you. But I would say in general that our students the undergrad students tend to work better when they know that there is one main person that they are connecting with at least on a weekly basis. They really needed to see faces during the pandemic. So Zoom calls at least once a week, and then email in between tended to work. Our students really missed being on site. But I can see then too that now, both for the students and the organizations, there's like, gosh, the org might be like, we want to see you here maybe once a week, but if there's other work that you can do at home, we don't really care when you do it. We just need this done. So I can see even just for this fall, the summer and the fall, that things are, you know, we're in a little bit of a transition, but somebody specific that they know is the person that they are responsible to. I think the other thing is to just then check in with me when I send information. We'll send like little evaluation links. Basically, how are things going? If there's for some reason, a student that is either not performing up to standards, or actually some of my students who are way overperforming, like then the site supervisor and I will talk about that. Is the student putting in way too many hours? For us, all of our students use the same hours tracking log. So everybody is doing the same thing. That organization can see how many hours they have in and where those hours are. The other thing we ask our internship host sites is to make sure that the student is welcome to staff meetings, if that is possible. And sometimes we understand it's not, but for our students, that is just like, oh my gosh, there's a lot that happens at the staff meetings. Like, you know, work does not just happen in vacuums. And I think it's really important for them to see kind of how the sausage is made and how do we do things in the background. And the same thing for board meetings. We ask that our students, as often as possible during the semester, can go to the board meetings. Many of our students have had a boards and governance class. And so they're able to think like, oh, the theory of this, and then in practice, this is what it looks like. And sometimes they can bring really great suggestions to their supervisor on, maybe, what if we tried this for the board meeting? So we ask that our students be exposed to those kinds of opportunities. And then also any kind of like networking / webinars that maybe the nonprofit host site has access to. So I see, for instance, like Greta Sanders from Habitat for Humanity in Rockford, like Habitat International likely has some webinar things that something might be really good for a student to get a background information on housing issues in the United States. Or other of our organizations have had like statewide networking events, and I'm thinking of CASA, Court Appointed Special Advocates, and they brought their intern to that so that they could speak with other people. So those things are invaluable because we can talk about it in the classroom, we can talk about the theory, but for our students to actually see and feel what that looks like, you know, these are some of the things that our students have known that they want to make a difference and that they want to work in a nonprofit, but those are some of the things that are like, oh my gosh, I got to work on this project and I got to meet these people and I can see like more broadly how it impacts everything. And it just solidifies their love. It's so funny sometimes. Oh, and now I know I'm probably going too far, but when we get their evaluations back at the end and they're just like giddy, like, oh my gosh, everything that I've been studying, like it's going to make a difference for my career. And Alicia and I laugh because we're like, okay, well, that's good. That's how we've always hoped this would be. But their excitement about that and the understanding that like, man, this solidified this. And I got to see lots of different roles in an organization. And now I know that this one probably doesn't fit my personality, but this role there does. And I think for all of us, it's as valuable for a student to realize what they don't want to do as what they do want to do. Because our hope is that then when our students graduate and they get to you, they've had enough experiences where they really understand where their personal gifts and talents collide with their knowledge, and they can go in and they're not applying for jobs that don't fit them well.
Yeah, I've certainly seen that on the undergraduate side. It's a lot about career exploration,
Right.
more so than the graduate program, where they kind of have a pretty good idea of where they're headed,
Yeah.
versus kind of the undergraduate side. I don't know, any other tips, Denise, that come to mind for the graduate program when it comes to internship supervisors?
You know, I should ditto everything that, you know, that was said in terms of, you know, the students, you know, they need the contact at least weekly with their supervisor, having them be part of the management team and making sure your other support staff know that they are not just the intern, you know, they are really part of the team, and making them feel at home. And then also giving them opportunities to ask, like, hey, can I sit in on this meeting? Can I try this? Can I do this? Because our, you know, students, they're still exploring too, because there's many avenues their career could take them. So opening up doors to them. We do also require professional development. Like we do want our students to get out there and network. So we require them to attend things, different professional association meetings and conferences and that kind of stuff. So that's all part of the program too. So, you know, but maybe at a little bit higher level at the graduate level.
Yep. So when it comes to internships, you have, and I put the link into for Huskies Get Hired, you can post a link directly there, either for a job or an internship, or you can go through a program like ours, like the Center or the MPA program, so that we help you find that student and help you with that kind of matching process and work with you directly. Both of those are okay. What I typically recommend is start at the program level where we know the students, we know who's most likely ready to do an internship, who has the right capacity, who, all of those things that they're ready, versus going to the university wide, because then it's like opening it up to whomever's looking for a job versus who has a special interest in working in a kind of a public service organization. So that's kind of, I think it's probably a better way to start. When it comes to students who want to do internships, where the undergraduate program is definitely a generalist degree. So we have, there's no big requirement to do a nonprofit internship other than our 100 level class. So we have majors, minors, and certificates. So you could have an accounting major doing an NNGO minor who wants to work in finance, or a marketing major with an NNGO minor who wants to work in advertising and marketing. So we marry well with a lot of other majors. So, you know, what their backgrounds are is very unique. So as you know, really precise as you can make that job description, that's really where you're going to attract the best students. And so it's better to be very specific. We want them to work in our social media campaign. We want them to work in our fundraising and development. We want them to work in HR, whatever it happens to be. Try and be specific, and then we can kind of find the students that might have those real specific kind of interest areas. And then around the financing piece, I think there's definitely some competitive advantages. If you're going to have a fully paid internship, you're going to compete a little bit better for students than you will with an unpaid internship. That's just the kind of the competitive marketplace kind of that we're in. I don't know, any other thoughts, Julianne or Denise, on that?
Well, as we're talking about site supervisors, I'm seeing a couple things in the chat. So Mark asked, you know, what are the site supervisor requirements for the majority of interns? And I think we talked about a lot of them. But then I saw Carolyn had popped something in that an internship that they didn't have the correct degree at the organization to oversee that. So for both Mark and Carolyn, in NNGO in the undergraduate area, we don't require that a site supervisor have a degree in something specific or have credentials. If whoever is running that organization, if they are okay, sometimes we have the executive director of a nonprofit is the site supervisor, and often it is somebody else who will more directly be working with whatever project that is. And that's fine with us. If the organization is okay with their employee being whichever employee they choose, we're okay with that on the undergraduate level. So there's not a specific requirement on that.
Carolyn, does that answer your question, or did you want to ask it further?
Does, and I'm sure that student was reaching out from a specific program, and the MPA program is probably a different case too. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, and we were, I think Carolyn, you had asked about kind of the length of internships. So undergraduates, typically a semester, maybe two. Denise had mentioned 21 months from beginning to end. And I think, Denise, I mean, we've tried to offer different kind of flexible options sometimes. For a year in one organization and a year in a different organization. So all those things are kind of open for discussion if we have that opportunity. So that's a question for Denise to negotiate.
Yeah, we try to work with you, and flexibility is key on some of these with funding and things like that. And also now with, some of our students do partial virtual and part in person. So, we really try to be flexible and help the employer as much as possible and not put too many restrictions on you, because I do realize every internship is so different. Students get such different experiences from different organizations, and that's to be expected. So.
Shiraz, you put a question in the chat if you want to ask it. I think it probably speaks to the individual backgrounds, but if you want to ask Julianne or Denise about that, go ahead.
Sure. I was asking if some of your interns are interested in or versatile with grant writing. That's one question, and would be excited about doing some of that work. And the second question is if a nonprofit is in the process of starting a new initiative, and would some interns be interested in sort of fine-tuning that mission and helping with business planning and other aspects of a new initiative, and which program might be a better fit for that?
I think I'll give an umbrella answer, and then you guys can answer specifically. Is what level of experience do you expect to have them coming in with or interested in? So sometimes I teach our fundraising and philanthropy class, for example, or have. And one of the things, we work on fundraising databases. And so I teach them about, well, these are all the different kinds of databases, but they actually don't get to try it because I don't have fundraising software I can just let them play with. So they know what it looks like. They know kind of the pros and cons, but they've never done it. That's more of an undergraduate kind of experience versus I think more of a graduate experience where they're like, oh yeah, I was part of a team and we submitted a grant proposal together. So I'd be willing to write a grant by myself or small amounts until I build up that experience. But yeah, Julianne or Denise, if you want to chime in.
Yeah, I think this connects within the chat. Chrissy had also asked kind of more common examples of internship opportunity areas. And so definitely on the undergrad area, I think whether it's through the nonprofit partnership or when we are directly connecting with students, we do look to see, if they're what their major, minor, certificate areas are. And, there are sometimes when I'll get in an internship job description and I'm just like, oh my gosh, off the top of my head, I can think of 2 students who this student would love this. And so Shiraz, for, when you're talking about grant writing, yes, our students as undergrads, they can have some background in philanthropy and fundraising. And in that we do a little bit of, looking at grants and seeing what that looks like. But we have students too, who are majoring in us and double majoring in communications or in English. So those students are like, I already have the storytelling abilities from I know how, I may not have done it, but I know I can put this together. And that's the thing about an internship. It's the place where they get to take all this academic knowledge that they have and what they've done in the academy and oh, but now I actually get to do that. So that, I think that's a great area. As Alicia said, this summer we have a student who is an accounting major and she is minoring with us, and she's working the nonprofit she got placed with. Once they found out what her background was, they were like, oh, our board of directors does not fully understand going through balance sheets. And, so she's helping them create a program for incoming board members, breaking it down. What does this really look like? And she's leveling it for people who have no experience, midline experience. And so she's helping them do a couple different things and setting up their books. So they were not at the beginning anticipating that. That wasn't a project that they had floated out there. But when they found out what her background was, then it was like, oh, hold it. You know, let us kind of flip a little bit and use your skills. So I think those things, we've talked about social media. We've had organizations that have just been like, whatever you want to do. And that has absolutely caused some stress for our students. That's maybe a little too much latitude. But I'm thinking of an organization where a student had just gotten out of the program development and evaluation class. And she was like, what would you guys think if I designed a program for elementary school students? Because she had kids in the elementary school in Dekalb. And they were like, we've always wanted to do that, but we never had anybody that could. So she's the one that designed 3 different programs for elementary school kids in Dekalb County who now go to this historical center. So honestly, for Chrissy, Mark, for all of you, there's almost nothing that you guys could want help with that we couldn't find a student for. It feels like often our students get pigeonholed, like you're young, you're digital native, you must be awesome at social media. And a lot of them are, and a lot of them are like, I stay away from social media like the plague. That is not my thing. But so that's why if you can have, I think, kind of a list of different things you are thinking of, our students will glom on to one of those. And I am really happy to work with you. If you like, could your students do this? Could you do that? On the undergrad level, I am happy to work with you to kind of create a job description that I think fits your needs, but then we can look for the kinds of students who I know have had classes that would support that project.
Well, I'll add to that is take a look through the curriculum, both at the master's, the MPA program, and our undergraduate program, and kind of see what courses they've taken. Likely when they get to you, because that might also kind of spark something where you're like, oh, this, and so be open to that. It could become a class project versus an internship. I mean, we have different ways that we can engage students in your organizations that may not be a real internship. It might be a class project. We can connect you with a faculty member that way. So that might make sense. And the other thing to keep in mind is that, we're a smallish program. So we have, give or take, 50 majors. We know all of them, their backgrounds. We know who are the diehard animal lovers, who are the civil rights advocates, who are the environmentalists. Like we kind of have a sense of who they are. So when we get an organization in, we really look for mission too. Is that a good fit for their background? So someone who wants to go into the arts and culture sector, we know a handful of those students. Let's go talk to them and say, hey, there's this great organization. Is this something you'd consider? So it is a back and forth going between the students and the needs of the organizations. And really, that's what the benefit is going through a program versus kind of, we have this internship and let's just send it out to the universe. I don't know, Denise, if you want to add anything to this discussion.
I will say, somebody's asking too about the MPA students. Are the interns mostly in local governments? And they are right now. Most of our students are in internships in local governments, primarily because of the paying aspect. We have a hard time finding nonprofits that can pay an intern the amount that we're asking for. But we tell the students also that these are the skills that can transfer easily into the nonprofit world. And, we find that those skills, the administrative type skills are, just as important and they can transfer easily.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if you're interested, the other thing I thought of when you said this is we also are in our program at the last semester, our students do a capstone project. And so this is another thing that if you have a project that a group of graduate students can work on in a semester, let us know, because we look for projects every semester that students can work on, and you have, something done within the semester and they can present to your board and everything. So that's another option that's a little different than the internship, but those are also things we look for. And it would also open the door to the nonprofit world to some of our students who have that interest. So.
Awesome. Any lasting questions or thoughts before we sign off?
I think I want to add in just how grateful we are to the organizations that take advantage and work with us on offering internships. We know we fully understand that you are getting somebody who is not quite a fully functioning employee yet. And yet it feels like this is where our students bloom. This is where they kind of figure out, this is where the rubber meets the road, and they figure out so much about themselves. And they do that because they get to see the good work and the mission and the vision of an organization and what it really looks like to make that happen. So, for us, I know, just thank you for considering having an intern. I know it's good for you guys because our students can do some really great things, but I think just your investment in an internship is really an investment in the nonprofit sector in general. And so thank you for that. I put up a link to just our academic, as you were speaking, Alicia, just our academic program. So you can see what students take if they're NNGO majors or minors. And so you will know what kinds of classes they would likely be choosing from. And then my email address, if you specifically want to work towards an intern, in an upcoming semester. So thank you.
And Julianne works on internships for the college. So if it's even if you're an intern, but you're like, well, we might be more suited to a political science student, Julianne is still a really good person to connect with because she can connect you with either taking a political science internship. What does that look like? How do I get connected? So we hope to give you, Denise and Julianne are both good contacts for connecting you with other resources at the university, but then also within our program. So Denise, any final thoughts?
No, but please reach out if you have questions about our program. And if you're interested in an intern, I'd happy to speak with you about, the whole process and send you some information to get started. So.
Awesome. Yes, so looking to place interns for fall and spring. They do it both semesters and as well as in the summer. Summer is always an option too. And I know some of you on the call, we're waiting to hear for IBHE funding, IBHE grant. We haven't gotten it yet. We haven't heard yet. So I can't make a big announcement. I wish I could, but I can't. I just talked to her on Friday. So hopefully this week we'll get that. But if not, you'll hear from me as soon as I can. And for those of you who were interns on this call, if you did an internship, you're probably more sympathetic about these internship opportunities. So again, thank you for considering working with the center and working with the public administration program. We're very grateful. I'm going to go ahead and stop